Welcome to today's amazing story. This is about Elena coming back to the company that once fired her, proving herself, and fixing a business that had lost its purpose. It was a morning that began like any other, but quickly turned into one of the most defining moments of my life. The boardroom was already humming when I arrived. Conversations, light laughter, and some flipping through printed itineraries. But when I stepped through the frosted glass doors, the atmosphere shifted immediately. The silence that struck the room felt as if a pin had fallen into a pool of gasoline. I had been sacked once, deemed powerless, irrelevant, but today I was here for something much larger than that. Change. Martin, in the middle of a sentence, paced in front of the group, delivering his speech as if he were hosting a TED Talk. He didn't see me coming, but the moment he did, his face shifted. The expression was a mix of surprise, displeasure, and bewilderment. He couldn't grasp why the ghost of the irrelevant woman from last week had suddenly reappeared in his hallowed space. Elena. He raised his voice, attempting authority. Only board members are permitted in this meeting. I grinned, not arrogantly, but with a sense of control and professionalism, then calmly adjusted my jacket. Exactly, I replied, pulling out a stack of papers and placing them deliberately at the head of the table. The room fell into complete silence. It was deliciously quiet. The tension was palpable, and Martin's mind raced to understand what was unfolding. When he returned to his senses, he glanced quickly at the papers I had placed before him, and then looked back at the group, waiting for someone to laugh, to tell him this was some kind of joke. No one did. Elena, he said again, this time more forcefully. As I mentioned, employees aren't allowed in board-level meetings. I held his gaze, unwavering. I'm not an employee here, I replied after a deliberate pause. As the majority shareholder, I am here to be present. The temperature in the room dropped by 5 degrees. It was as if the very air had thickened. The board members, once checked out, now sat up straight. Mr. Dalton, the longest-serving board member, adjusted his glasses, a relic from the Nixon era, and picked up the top document in front of him. He scanned the embossed seal and with a scowl asked, "Is this true?" "It is," I confirmed, my voice steady. "I received 90% of the company's shares via a family trust on my 30th birthday. The documents are fully compliant with corporate governance, filed and notarized." Martin's face flushed an angry shade of pink. His jaw clenched as he processed the information. Then, like any cornered man with too much pride and not enough support, he resorted to insults. "You're not serious," he sneered. "This is a ruse, a personal grudge. Why would your father—" I interrupted, calm and composed. "Because he trusted me. He anticipated what would happen without supervision. He knew what this place could become." There it was. The truth hit the room with an undeniable force. Martin had led the company down a path of ego and vanity, and everyone understood what I meant, even if they didn't say it aloud. The business had become his personal project, built on overinflated self-importance. I opened the second folder in front of me, a fresh set of documents. "Let's review the executive leadership," I said, my voice cutting through the silence. "Let's start with performance." I didn't shout. I didn't need to. The performance was in the numbers, and the numbers didn't lie. Employee satisfaction had dropped by 38%. Key department turnover had spiked by 47%. 3 unresolved discrimination allegations were being handled by HR, and in a market where competitors were growing, we had flat sales growth. I observed the board as they took it all in, their discomfort tangible. Then I turned to the second section of the report. And that's just the beginning, I continued. Overspending on executive benefits, unapproved compensation for travel, while the rest of the organization was prohibited from hiring. Executive incentives all approved under Martin's direction. Martin shot to his feet, his face contorting with rage. "You're manipulating the data," he yelled, his voice rising. "You're twisting it to fit your personal revenge fantasies." I stared at him, unblinking. "I don't have to twist anything. What I possess is proof. You believed no one with sufficient authority would ever challenge you. That assumption is now terminated." And then I dropped the final bombshell. I moved to remove Martin Reed as CEO immediately, with effect from the completion of the necessary documentation. A pin could have dropped. The board secretary, wide-eyed, whispered, "You don't require a second vote, do you?" "No," I replied, calm but firm. "I own 90%. It's more than just a majority. It's mathematically binding." Dalton, adjusting his glasses again, cleared his throat. "With your vote alone, the motion is deemed carried in accordance with the company bylaws." Martin, completely unhinged, slammed his fist on the table. The sound reverberated through the room like a bullet. "This is impossible," he snarled. I gave him one final glance, the same calm stare I had when he had fired me. There was no need to call security. He didn't fight back. Instead, his shoulders sagged as he left, defeated. He no longer looked like a leader. He appeared diminished, lost in the weight of the power he had lost. As the door clicked shut behind him, I turned to face the board. This company deserves better. Its citizens deserve better. And that is precisely what they will receive, right now. Dalton, with his arms folded, sat back and nodded. "Elena, welcome back." That was the end of it. No confetti, no dramatic music, just a quiet, undeniable power shift. A change that wasn't about retaliation, but about fixing what had been broken. The next few weeks weren't about taking over Martin's office or flaunting my position. There was no nameplate reveal or victory lap. Instead, I spent my time rebuilding the company, revitalizing the business my father had founded. I held meetings in the same conference room where Martin used to boast about exaggerated sales estimates and hand out stale praise to a select few. Now the room buzzed with real work, real engagement. But even with all that, the energy in the company was off. The silence after Martin's departure lingered in the halls. People were uneasy, unsure of what came next. I started by simply listening. I visited departments, walked through hallways, sat in break rooms and asked questions. I asked about flaws, absences, unspoken frustrations. And it didn't take long to spot the issues. Some were overinflated, with fake authority, while others were holding departments together with duct tape and sheer grit. Then, I started moving the pieces, slowly, deliberately. Maya, a customer service representative who had been unofficially leading her team for a year, was elevated to head of client experience. Kevin, a talented product developer who had left the company after being passed over for a position, was rehired. The human side of the business was coming back to life. I redesigned HR, clearing out dusty folders filled with unanswered complaints. I sat down with employees who thought their voices had been ignored, and we worked through their issues one by one. I fired mid-level supervisors who had become toxic, gaslighting and manipulating those beneath them. And I began a program to reward creativity, promote equity, and recognize the silent laborers who had always held this company together, unseen and unacknowledged. In the months that followed, things began to change. The company no longer felt clinical and cold. The hallways once again had life. People laughed, joked, and even posted memes on Slack. Desks had personal touches, framed pictures, plants that weren't left to wither away. There was even a sticky note on one desk that read, "Water me. I'd like to survive, like we all do." I visited the office late one evening and passed by an engineer's desk. Written in blue marker on the whiteboard was a message that hit me like a bolt of lightning. She returned. She took charge. Not she was fired, not she came back. She took charge. And it wasn't just a victory. It was a transformation. The following week, I entered the CEO's office, not because I had to, but because it was time. There were no grand gestures, no new furniture, just a tidy desk and a framed picture of my father and me from the opening day of the business. We had received our best quarterly report in 5 years. Customer satisfaction had risen by 23%. Employee retention had jumped by 41%. Revenue records were being broken. But more than the numbers, it was how we got there that mattered. No coercion, no exaggerated statistics, just real work and honest communication. When I stood in front of the board for the first time in my new role, the energy was different. The faces around the table weren't all men in suits. There were women, representatives from sales, design, and engineering. Diversity wasn't just a checkbox anymore. It was a reality. Richard Tanaka, our new strategic advisor, sat at the center, nodding as I spoke. I thanked everyone for believing in different kind of leadership, the kind that didn't seek accolades or first-class flights, but instead sought responsibility, vision, and the courage to say what needed to be said. After the meeting, I made my way back to my office. Maya, now head of client experience, greeted me with a grin. "Ready?" she asked. We walked to the conference room where our team was waiting, but this time the room felt different. Not just in the furniture or the design, but in the faces. There was a sense of trust, of belonging. We were all working towards something bigger, together. Leadership wasn't about being at the top. It was about creating an environment where people could be themselves, without fear, without pretense. We had built something real, something tangible, and I knew that this time it wasn't just about me. It was about all of us. And in that moment, I realized that I hadn't just returned to the company. I had returned to the family, not of employees, but of people working toward a common goal. The vision, now shared, belonged to all of us. And that, my friends, is how we built a company that cared, not for titles or egos, but for its people. I hope you found this story inspiring.